All right, we have a war to sell, so who's going to come out of the woodwork but Glenn Beck to do exactly that and justify and glaze every single action of the military-industrial complex, no matter the reality of the situation. So we have him on air with Piers Morgan, who also supports the military action in Iran, which is odd because he was very much against the military action in Iraq, and there's so much to compare between the two events. I don't know why he fell for this one, didn't fall for that one. The propaganda is basically the same.
I'm glad that Donald Trump is our president because I wouldn't have had the balls to do it. I think it was the right thing to do, but I wouldn't have had the balls to do it.
Well, it's really interesting because I know that historically, I mean, I'm not going to pick on you for this, but I happen to be the editor.
Right. What does he mean by do it? Does he mean possibly set back Iran's nuclear program or breakout time by 1 to 2 months? Most likely case scenario, there is some damage in the embedded equipment. Only enough to set back their breakout by a month or two, because they moved out all the non-embedded equipment and their actual stockpile beforehand. Again, entirely ineffective. Let's go to the Israeli strikes when they did completely surface level attacks on Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordow, and struck down entire apartment buildings just to kill a nuclear scientist, a nuclear physicist, and killed 20 children, 60 civilians. So what does he mean by do it? And in no way have we completely curtailed Iran's nuclear capabilities. The only way we can do that is with a deal, but then again, I don't even think Iran is a nuclear threat. I think if we're going to make a deal with Iran, we should focus on their proxies. This obsession with nuclearization is stupid. Like, allow them to go under the most standards, the standards of the IAEA, which essentially says you can do whatever you want within reason as long as you're not weaponizing. So let's do that, and then make a deal for their proxies. That's the best course of action from the point we're at right now.
It'll be obvious what I'm saying, but I was editor of the Daily Mirror newspaper, one of the big national papers in the UK, for many years, and I campaigned vociferously on the front page after front page against the Iraq war. And it was particularly contentious in the UK because we were the Labour supporting newspaper and Tony Blair was a Labour Prime Minister. So it was a huge sort of deal over here. And I know that you initially supported the Iraq war, and then afterwards you later accepted that had been a mistake, which, again, is part of your strength. I think.
I think, Piers, you can't silence people when they're wrong because hopefully they're on the road to becoming right.
Yes.
But you only get that if you have.
But we already have all the information we need to know that the Ayatollah is less of a threat when it comes to WMDs than Saddam Hussein was. It's a very simple logic, right? Saddam Hussein was an extremely violent person. He was willing to conquer territory, Kuwait, Iran, without reason, out of aggression. So if he had a nuclear bomb, I would be scared. I would honestly, I would think that some kind of military intervention would be necessary. But the Ayatollah is not that. The Ayatollah is, we've had 2 Ayatollahs in a row, the whole kind of dynasty. Say, Iran has never started a war and never will. Right? They've started cold wars, if you want to say that they control their proxies in Hezbollah, but they have never started a hot war. They also have a religious decree against nuclear weapons. We know that. We know that Khamenei does not want nuclear weapons at the moment because his IRGC commanders have been begging him to withdraw from the non-proliferation treaty so that they can get nuclear weapons, because there are a bunch of lunatics in the West that still want to overthrow the Ayatollah's regime. So it's just a security guarantee against regime change, right? The Islamic Republic has one main goal. It has several other goals, but its biggest one is preserve the Islamic Republic, no matter what they might say about Shia Islam being the most important aspect or resistance against the West. They haven't done that in their actions. The JCPOA is a great example of that when they compromise with the West to preserve the health of the regime, right? To preserve its power and influence. They make a compromise with the West, let the West tell them what to do with their uranium, etc. Same thing after the Iraq War, right? They helped help American forces in Afghanistan and Iraq initially, even though America is an enemy of Iran. So compromising with the West is absolutely not in the ideology of Iran, because it doesn't like what the West stands for. It doesn't like the secularism. It doesn't like the democracy. In the Ayatollah's case. But that's kind of my reasoning.
A debate. And I will tell you that I was for Afghanistan. I was a very big, war hawk. Let's go in and just do it. Let's do it. I'm not that way anymore, because I've seen the pattern. It doesn't work out. America needs to mind its own business. We can't export what we have. I have hopes for the Middle East. I have hopes for Iran. I pray for the people in Iran. They're a very big danger. But, the one thing, again, I go back to Donald Trump. I don't think he's being duped. In 2016, maybe. He has told me he didn't really know what he was up against. He knows what he's up against now. He hates war, hates it. As much as he loves tariffs, he hates war. He has told me eye to eye about how he has redesigned, or he had to rebuild our nuclear.
So this whole thing can be avoided, and we don't have to have any war if Trump is just willing to let Iran have their civilian nuclear program. Like the whole hang up in the negotiations was that Trump was willing to go to any length to keep that on the table, that Iran would have nothing to do with uranium ever. That was his standard. So if you're super against war, then why not just go back to the JCPOA framework if you're super against nuclearization too, in an otherwise pretty peaceful country? Peaceful, of course Iran is not peaceful, but peaceful in terms of they're not going to be aggressively invading their neighbors or sending a bomb over to Tel Aviv. Make a JCPOA-like framework, let them enrich to 3.67% or up to 10%, it doesn't really matter. And they were very compliant with that. So what's wrong with that? Why go into a war scenario where you have to break out B-2 bombers when you can just concede something that has been conceded before and successfully, and that uranium has not been weaponized under the JCPOA. I don't think having a nuclear bomb is not one of the main goals of the Iranian regime. That's not their top goal. They want to preserve the regime, spread Shia Islam, and oppose Western colonialism as they see it.
Your arsenal, and in a fashion that I've never seen Donald Trump. He said, Glenn, it can never be used. It is horrifying what can be done now. I know, I helped rebuild it. It can never be used. He hates nuclear war. He hates regular war.
Yeah.
And I think he really believes he did the right thing, and I don't think he's being duped by it.
No, and it's interesting because I know that you were hoping he didn't do what he did. Now that he's done it, and obviously it's incredibly early days, and none of us can be sure what is going to happen, and I wouldn't even attempt to guess.
What's going to happen is that we're in exactly the same place we were a month ago, except now 1,000 civilians are dead in Iran, probably a little bit less than that, and 25 civilians are dead in Israel, so we're in the exact same place. Iran's breakout time is slightly more, most likely scenario, but they can still get a bomb if they want. The reality of the situation is that no one seems to be talking about is that if Iran wanted a nuclear bomb, a crude nuclear bomb that did not have to deal with attaching to a missile in a compact way, then it could have had that any time between really 2022 and 2025 when they built up that huge 60% uranium stockpile. They could have just gotten a bomb anytime they wanted. But the fact of the matter is they don't want a bomb because having a bomb for a bomb's use, it does not serve their purpose at all. They want something on the bargaining table. That's it. And if a regime change is threatened of them, they want a pathway out of that. And their pathway is having uranium stockpiles that are close to weaponization, but not at weaponization. So they can break out a crude nuclear bomb in maybe a month or 2 or 6 in secret that isn't attached to like some ICBM missile, pretty easy to create with their AMAD technology that they researched from 1999 to 2003. and they can have that bomb and potentially save the regime. That's all they want.
But I certainly think that Trump's intentions were well-intentioned. I think he has said for many years that Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon, and he genuinely believed that enriching their uranium stocks from 3.5% to 60% was a dangerous escalation that could only be heading one way. And so he's taken the same...
I wonder if it's just something that's wrong with me. Like, why do I not care that much about Iran being close to a nuclear bomb? I mean, I feel like I very much avoid thinking about the worst case scenario. I think about the most likely case scenario, and the scenario that would fall in everyone's best interest. So that's why I much more care about Iran defunding its terrorist proxies than worrying about what level it's enriching their uranium to, especially because they haven't even weaponized it yet. If they have, then the IAEA would environmentally sample particles all over the place, 90% enriched uranium, but they've only sampled like 2-minute particles back in 2023 of 84% enriched uranium, and that was plausibly explained by variations in Iran's new machinery. So the evidence is just not there. Everything's at 60%.
Action that he did when he took out Soleimani or Baghdadi, when he attacked Syria, when he dropped big bombs in Afghanistan. He's done things strategically as he sees it without actually committing large number of American troops on the ground.
You also have to look at this. Every single president since Clinton has said this. Okay, Iran has killed more Americans as a nation than I think any other nation has. They've been an enemy. Every single president has said they cannot have.
That's true, but that's in the context of the Iraq occupation and in the Afghanistan occupation. You can't just say Iran is bloodthirsty for Americans and they'll kill any American that they see. No, maybe they don't want to be sandwiched between two American client states. They don't want Iraq and Afghanistan after the war on terror to turn into these like American hubs, American propped up government, where then the lunatics back in America, should they get elected, who want to overthrow the Iranian regime, use Iraq and Afghanistan as kind of a way to exert that same kind of influence in Iran. So, Iran helped us defeat ISIS, helped us against the Taliban initially, helped us overthrow Saddam Hussein, although we didn't really need their help. Without Qasem Soleimani flying to Baghdad in 2014, ISIS would have probably killed tens or hundreds of thousands of more people than they did. I mean, they would have taken over Iraq essentially. So, Iran does have that kind of benefit. It's not a lunatic state. It's not a good state. It's not a democracy, but it's not a lunatic state like you can argue Saddam Hussein's Iraq was.
Have a nuclear weapon. I don't want to go to war with Iran. I don't want any of this. However, when you talk to a B-2 bomber, which I did over the weekend, they have been running this particular run for 15 years plus. We built in White Sands, we built a model of that reactor. This bomb that we dropped, we're the only ones with it in the world. It was made for those reactors, specifically for those reactors.
Then it's hilarious how they completely did nothing. And it's also hilarious how Iran had all the pretense in the world to evacuate all of their important equipment and stockpiles, and the satellite imagery completely corroborates that it didn't do that much. So it should have pulled it off better then. Now I don't think these strikes, even if they were hyper successful, don't think that they would have done that much, because at the end, what we need is some kind of deal, ideally a peace deal. Unfortunately, a peace deal is going to involve Israel, because a big hang-up for Iran is the Palestinian situation. The leadership right now, the population is beginning to care less about the Palestinians, somewhat unfortunately. But more than likely, a deal is not going to be a peace deal. It's going to be some kind of we lift sanctions and you defund, or you defund some of your proxies. That's like a JCPOA, but for proxies. Or do the JCPOA, but for nuclear arrangements. And I don't care. I just don't think that's that important. I think we could save much, much more lives if we focus on the proxies, rather than obsess about nuclear bombs when we don't really need to obsess about them. That's just my opinion.
so accurate, it can hit the top of a pop can or a Coke can from 50,000 feet. It had to go into a 10 by 10 foot vent. They have been running this over and over again. That's not Donald Trump. That's the American policy. We know that these people are serious when they say they're going to burn first the Jews in the Islamic fiery furnace and then America. We're the great Satan. They have been a threat.
Where does this Iran wants to kill all the Jews come from? Then why do they have Judaism protected in their constitution? Like, look at the people who are oppressed in Iran. You can run down the list. Women, LGBTQ, Christian converts, any converts from Shia Islam, they will probably execute you. But they don't have much of an issue with Judaism because they're not evangelical, or they're not trying to convert other people. So evangelical Christians, they have a problem with because they're trying to get converts. But like Iran has said multiple times in their UN, what they've submitted to the UN, their plan for Israel is not burn all the Jews. I don't know about the religious context. Maybe that is a real thing that Islamists say. It's more of an ISIS thing. But they said they want a referendum among the indigenous population, which means pre-1948, which would exclude a lot of Jewish refugees, unfortunately. So it is highly immoral, but it's not kill all the Jews.